Part 1. Skincare. Moisturize, moisturize, moisturize. There are interviews that feel routine, scripted, predictable, and then there are those rare moments when you sit across from someone who makes you rethink everything you thought you knew. For me, that person was Carmen Dell'Orefice. I had spent years interviewing the world's most famous faces, Hollywood stars, billionaire entrepreneurs, artists whose work shaped culture. They all had their secrets, their carefully curated routines. But no one radiated quite like Carmen. She was 92, yet her skin glowed with a softness and grace that defied time itself. No harsh lines, no signs of surrender to age, only the elegance of a woman who had lived, loved, and learned. I had to know. So I asked the question that had been burning inside me from the moment I first saw her. "Carmen, what's your secret?" She tilted her head, a slow smile forming, as if she had been waiting for me to ask. And then she whispered, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, "Moisturize, moisturize, moisturize." I laughed, expecting more. A trick, a procedure, some exclusive treatment reserved for supermodels and royalty. But she just sat there, serene, watching me absorb her words. She wasn't joking. A ritual, not a routine. Carmen didn't just moisturize. She treated it like a sacred ritual. Every morning, every night, after every shower, before I sleep, it's the one thing I never forget. My skin has never known a day without hydration. She touched her face gently, as if reminding herself of its resilience. It's not about vanity, it's about respect. If you respect your skin, it will respect you back. She explained how, in her early years, she learned to care for her skin like it was a fine silk fabric. If you leave silk in the sun, it fades. If you let it dry out, it cracks. But if you care for it, it will last for decades. That was her philosophy. She never let her skin dry out, ever. If she ran out of moisturizer, she found alternatives. Olive oil, coconut oil, even butter in extreme cases. She was resourceful, determined, unwilling to let a single day pass without nurturing the skin that had carried her through life. People complicate skincare, she sighed. They chase the newest trend, the most expensive serum. But the truth? It's simple. Hydration is everything. Hydration inside and out. But Carmen's secret wasn't just about what she put on her skin. It was also about what she put inside her body. She lifted a glass of water, twirling it lightly in her fingers. "This," she said, "is the real beauty treatment." She drank liters of water a day, always keeping a glass by her side. Hydrated skin, she explained, starts from within. People spend fortunes on anti-aging creams, yet they forget the cheapest, most powerful remedy: water. She began every morning with a glass of water and lemon, cleansing her system before the day even began. It was non-negotiable, just like moisturizing. And the results? They spoke for themselves. Less is more. Unlike today's influencers with their 10-step skincare regimens, Carmen believed in simplicity. Her routine? Gentle cleansing. A non-stripping cleanser, morning and night. Hydration. A rich, nourishing moisturizer, applied with upward strokes. Sun protection. The one thing she never skipped, rain or shine. That was it. No complicated serums. No layering of 20 different acids. Just hydration and protection. And science backed her up. A groundbreaking Harvard study found that daily sunscreen use slows skin aging by up to 24%. Another showed that well-hydrated skin heals faster, stays firmer, and resists wrinkles better. Carmen had been ahead of her time. She had figured out decades ago what researchers were only just confirming. Minimal makeup, maximum glow. Unlike most models, Carmen barely wore makeup. "Foundation," she scoffed. "That's just paint. I'd rather have skin that glows naturally." She reserved makeup only for photo shoots, and even then, she wiped it off the moment the camera stopped rolling. "Let your skin breathe," she advised. "It will thank you later." The science of hydration. Carmen's skincare philosophy wasn't just based on habit, it was grounded in science. Dermatologists have long confirmed that moisturized skin maintains elasticity, heals faster, and resists damage. Studies have shown that dry skin accelerates wrinkles due to the breakdown of collagen. Hydrated skin has better blood circulation, which gives it a natural glow. Moisturizing strengthens the skin barrier, protecting against environmental damage. Carmen wasn't just following beauty trends. She was following biology. More than skin deep. As I sat there absorbing everything she said, I realized something. Her beauty wasn't just about her skincare routine. It was about her relationship with herself. She didn't see aging as something to fight. She saw it as something to nurture. People fear aging, she mused, tilting her head. I don't. I embrace it. My skin tells my story, and I make sure it's a beautiful one. She saw beauty not as something fleeting, but as something that evolved. I have no interest in looking 20, she told me, but I do have an interest in looking like the best version of myself at 92. And she had succeeded. The unfinished lesson. That day, Carmen changed the way I saw beauty. I left her apartment with a bottle of moisturizer in one hand and a new perspective in the other. But just as I was about to step out, she called after me. Skincare is just one piece of the puzzle, darling. I turned intrigued. She smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. If you really want to know the secret to aging well, you need to understand how to eat. She paused. Come back tomorrow, I'll show you. Part 2, Eating Without Fear. Carmen Dell'Orefice's flexible approach to food. Some women treat food like a battlefield, a constant war between cravings and discipline, between indulgence and guilt. Carmen Dell'Orefice, she treats it like an old friend. I learned this the moment I stepped into her kitchen. It wasn't filled with diet books or calorie charts. There were no green juice bottles lined up on the counter, no strict meal plans taped to the fridge. Instead, it was warm, inviting, a place of comfort, a place where food was meant to be enjoyed, not feared. And as she sliced a piece of fruit with practiced elegance, she looked up at me with that same knowing smile she always had. They say you are what you eat, she mused, but I say you are how you eat. The hunger of the past. It would be easy to assume that Carmen had always lived this way, surrounded by beauty, effortlessly poised, untouched by hardship. But that couldn't be further from the truth. She grew up in the Great Depression, a time when food wasn't about choices or preferences, it was about survival. Her mother, a seamstress, worked tirelessly to keep them afloat. There were nights when dinner was nothing but a piece of stale bread, mornings when hunger was as familiar as the cold air that crept through the cracks in their apartment walls. I didn't have the luxury of being picky, she told me. You ate what you had, and you were grateful. Maybe that's why, when success finally came knocking, she never allowed food to become her enemy. She refused to fear it. She refused to let it control her. Eating with intuition, not restriction. Unlike many in the fashion industry, Carmen never followed extreme diets. I eat to my appetite, she explained. I don't count calories. I don't punish myself. I listen to what my body needs. Some mornings that meant yogurt with honey. Other days, eggs and toast. She loved fresh, whole foods, spinach, berries, fish, nuts. But she never forced herself into rigid rules. I'll have my ice cream too, she laughed. Always have, always will. Yes, ice cream. Carmen kept it in her freezer, not out of guilt, but out of joy. You have to have something in life that makes you feel safe, she said. For me, that's ice cream. She never binged, she never deprived. She simply ate with balance. The science behind Carmen's choices. What fascinated me most was that Carmen wasn't just following instinct. She was unknowingly following science. Studies have shown that strict diets increase stress and lead to unhealthy relationships with food. People who eat intuitively maintain healthier weights than those who restrict themselves. A diet rich in whole foods, like Carmen's, promotes longevity and youthful skin. Her love for probiotic-rich yogurt supports gut health. Her morning glass of lemon water, a natural detoxifier, her habit of drinking plenty of water, keeps skin hydrated and glowing. Everything she did, whether she realized it or not, was backed by research. The joy of food. But if there was one thing that set Carmen apart, it was this. She truly enjoyed food. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. She never rushed through a meal, never scrolled through her phone while eating. When I eat, she told me, I eat. That's all I do, and I enjoy it. She saw food as pleasure, nourishment, and art, never as an obstacle. And maybe that's why, at 92, she still glowed. The next secret. As we finished our conversation, Carmen leaned back, studying me carefully. You've learned about skincare, she said. You've learned about food. She paused, her lips curving into that signature smile. But do you know what truly keeps a woman alive? I held my breath. She reached out, gracefully stretching her arms, her posture perfect. Movement, she whispered. Come back tomorrow. I'll show you how to never grow old. Part 3. Daily gentle movement, the key to lifelong vitality. Aging is often seen as an inevitable decline, a slow surrender of strength, grace, and energy. But Carmen Dell'Orefice never surrendered to anything. When I arrived for our third meeting, I expected to find her seated elegantly in a chair, perhaps with a book in one hand and tea in the other. Instead, I found her stretching, her body moving with the ease of someone decades younger. She looked up at me, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Darling, she said, effortlessly lifting one leg onto the edge of a chair. You must never stop moving. That's how you stay alive. A childhood of movement and survival. Watching her now, strong, poised, and agile, it was hard to imagine the little girl she once was. Born in 1931, Carmen grew up in a world that demanded resilience. Her childhood was shaped by hardship, by a mother who worked tirelessly as a seamstress, by days spent in and out of foster homes whenever money ran too low. We didn't have cars, she recalled. We walked everywhere, miles and miles. It wasn't exercise, it was survival. Movement had been a necessity, a way of life, long before she understood its importance. At the age of 13, she dreamed of becoming a ballet dancer. Every afternoon, she would board a bus to class, her long limbs awkward, yet full of potential. It was on one of those rides that fate intervened. A photographer's wife spotted her and saw something extraordinary. By 15, she was on the cover of Vogue. By 20, she had walked the most prestigious runways in the world. But while modeling brought fame, it also demanded an unwavering connection with her body. You learn quickly that your body is your greatest asset, she said. If you don't take care of it, no one else will. The power of gentle movement. Unlike the high-intensity workouts that flood social media today, Carmen never forced herself into punishing routines. She didn't believe in exhaustion, in sweat-drenched gym sessions, in pushing her body to the breaking point. Instead, she believed in consistency, in movement that was gentle yet powerful. I walk every day, she told me, even if it's just around my apartment. She swore by stretching, by simple leg lifts, by rolling her hips each morning to check in with her body. Her routine was never rigid, never a chore. Some mornings I do more, some mornings I do less. The point is, I always do something. Science backs her up. Studies have shown that walking 30 minutes a day can reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. Gentle stretching maintains flexibility, reduces stiffness, and prevents injury as we age. Low-impact movement improves circulation, which keeps the skin glowing and the mind sharp. She didn't move to stay thin. She moved to stay alive. The art of listening to the body. Carmen's secret wasn't just in her movements. It was in her attunement to her body's needs. She didn't follow a strict fitness plan. She didn't believe in pushing through pain. If I feel tightness, I stretch. If my energy is low, I walk. If something feels off, I adjust. She taught me that movement should be intuitive, not forced. That aging isn't about loss, it's about adaptation. And perhaps most importantly, she understood that movement wasn't just physical. It's all connected, darling, she said, pressing a hand to her chest. The body, the mind, the spirit. You must keep them all in motion. The dance of life I watched as she turned on her old radio, filling the room with the soft hum of jazz. Then to my surprise, she began to dance. Slow, graceful movements, arms lifting, feet gliding over the floor. Even if I have no reason to dance, I dance, she said. It reminds me that I'm still here. And in that moment, I understood. Movement wasn't just about fitness. It was about celebrating the fact that you are alive. The next revelation. As our conversation came to an end, Carmen rested her hands on her hips, breathing deeply but effortlessly. She had shared her wisdom on skincare. She had unraveled the myths of diet. She had revealed the secret of movement, but there was still something more. I could see it in the way she hesitated, as if debating whether to let me in on her final truth. Then she smiled, her eyes twinkling. "But you know, darling," she said, lowering her voice, "there's one more thing that keeps me young." She leaned in slightly, as if about to reveal a conspiracy. "Love." She laughed, a soft, knowing laugh, full of stories yet to be told. "Come back tomorrow and I'll tell you the real secret to never growing old." Part 4. Breath and Mindset. Staying optimistic and managing stress. Some women wear their age like a burden. Carmen Dell'Orefice wears hers like a crown. At 92, she moves through life with the grace of someone who has never let time weigh her down. Her skin glows, her body remains strong, but perhaps the most striking thing about her isn't her beauty at all. It's her mind, sharp, clear, and utterly fearless. As I stepped into her apartment for our final conversation, I expected to discuss more routines, more rituals. But instead, Carmen led me to a window, motioning for me to stand beside her. She took a slow, deep breath, filling her lungs with the crisp New York air. Then she exhaled, long and steady. Finally, she spoke. "Darling, if you don't know how to breathe, you don't know how to live." Breathing through life's storms. Carmen's journey hadn't been one of effortless luxury. She had known hardship, pain, and loss. Born into a world of uncertainty, she spent her childhood bouncing between foster homes, moving wherever her mother's unstable finances dictated. There were nights when the only thing she had to hold on to was the sound of her own breath. Steady, rhythmic, unbroken. "I learned early on that the only thing I could control was myself," she told me. "And the easiest way to do that? My breath." She recalled moments of anxiety, moments when the world felt too heavy, too unpredictable. "But then I'd close my eyes," she said, "and breathe. Deep in, deep out, until I remembered, I am here. I am still standing." Breath, she explained, wasn't just about oxygen. It was about presence, about calming the storm inside when the world outside became too chaotic. The power of the mind. But breathing alone wasn't enough. Carmen had built a fortress of resilience within her mind, refusing to let negativity dictate her life. "Most people age not because of time," she mused, "but because of stress." She had seen it in the industry. Models, actresses, women who clung desperately to their youth, only to let fear and anxiety steal their beauty faster than age ever could. "I decided long ago," she said, "that I would never let stress own me." She did this by choosing her thoughts carefully, the way an artist selects colors for a masterpiece. She didn't dwell on what she couldn't control. She refused to carry anger or resentment. She surrounded herself with beauty, laughter, and things that brought her joy. "I tell myself every morning," she smiled, "I am alive, I am here, and I will enjoy today." Science behind Carmen's philosophy. As I listened, I realized this wasn't just wisdom, it was science. Research has shown that deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing stress and slowing aging. People with a positive outlook live longer, healthier lives. Chronic stress weakens the immune system and accelerates aging at a cellular level. Carmen had unknowingly designed her life around these principles, long before science caught up. She practiced meditative breathing without calling it meditation. She engaged in mindfulness without ever using the term. She lived with gratitude, knowing that each day was a gift. The final lesson. As the sun dipped lower, Carmen turned to me with a look I had come to recognize, a look that meant she had one last thing to say. "You want to know the real secret to never growing old?" she asked. I nodded, hanging on to every word. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Love." She let the word linger, as if it contained the entire universe. Then she laughed softly. Come back tomorrow, darling. That's a lesson worth taking your time with. Part 5. Love and intimacy. Love is the source of life. Some people search their whole lives for the secret to youth. Carmen Dell'Orefice had known it all along. It wasn't hidden in a jar of expensive cream. It wasn't in a diet plan or an exercise routine. It wasn't something you could buy, measure, or count. It was love. Not just romantic love, not just fleeting passion, but love in all its forms. The love of living, of being seen, of feeling deeply and fearlessly. When I arrived for our final interview, she was waiting by the window, bathed in the golden light of the afternoon. She turned to me, eyes glimmering with that unmistakable mischief. Are you ready for the real secret, darling? She asked. I nodded, breathless. She smiled. Love is what keeps us alive. The longing for love. Carmen knew what it was like to crave love, to search for it, to lose it, to find it again. As a child, love was a fragile thing, a fleeting presence. Her parents' relationship was turbulent, full of passionate reconciliations and painful separations. She spent her early years moving between foster homes, never quite knowing where she belonged. I learned early on, she said, that love is not always constant, but that doesn't mean you stop searching for it. Her first marriage at 21 was a lesson in heartbreak. It was followed by others, each one teaching her something new about herself, about desire, about the difference between love and need. She had known passion, she had known loneliness, and through it all, she had never given up on the idea that love, real, soul-deep love, was always worth it. The power of intimacy. At 92, Carmen still believed in the power of touch, of connection, of desire. She laughed at the idea that intimacy was something reserved for the young. My dear, she said, why would I give that up? Do you stop drinking water when you get older? Do you stop breathing? She believed that physical closeness, whether a kiss, a lingering touch, or simply the presence of someone who truly sees you, was as vital as air. Studies back her up. Science has shown that intimacy releases oxytocin, the love hormone, which reduces stress and promotes longevity. Physical affection strengthens the immune system, lowers blood pressure, and even eases pain. People in loving relationships live longer, healthier lives. Carmen wasn't just indulging in romance, she was preserving her spirit, her body, her very essence. Love beyond romance. But love, she reminded me, wasn't just about lovers. It was about friendship, self-love, the simple joy of human connection. I have had grand love, she said, but I have also had grand friendships, and those matter just as much. She found love in conversations, in laughter, in the simple act of being present with another soul. Love is not about possession, she mused. It is about presence. And that was perhaps her greatest lesson. That love is not something you wait for. It is something you create. The final revelation. As the sun began to set, Carmen turned to me, her expression softer now, almost wistful. We spend so much time searching, she said, for youth, for meaning, for love. She reached for her cup of tea, cradling it in her hands. But the truth is, darling, love is not something you find. It is something you give. She looked at me, eyes filled with the weight of 9 decades of experience. And the more you give, the more you will have. I sat in silence, letting the words settle, feeling the undeniable truth of them. She had taught me about skincare, about food, about movement, about breath. But this was the real secret. And yet, as I prepared to leave, Carmen leaned in once more, that mischievous spark returning. But do you know the final, most important lesson? She whispered. I shook my head. She smiled. It's about how you leave this world, with grace, with dignity, with peace. I held my breath. Come back tomorrow, darling. That's a story worth telling. Part 6, Mindset. The power of continuous growth. Most people think aging is about slowing down. Carmen Dell'Orefice thinks it's about speeding up. Not physically, of course, but mentally, emotionally, intellectually, always moving forward, always learning, always evolving. At 92 years old, she wasn't just maintaining her beauty. She was maintaining her mind, her curiosity, her hunger for growth. When I arrived for our next conversation, I expected to see her sitting with her usual elegance, perhaps flipping through an old magazine or sipping tea. Instead, I found her at her desk, reading a book on neuroscience. She looked up, smiled, and tapped the cover. "Darling," she said, "you must never stop learning. That is how you stay alive." A mind that refused to be left behind. Carmen's life had never been static. From the moment she was discovered at 13 years old, her world was a whirlwind of change. Photo shoots, runways, the glitz and glamour of high fashion. But what people didn't see were the moments in between. The nights she spent alone in hotel rooms, wondering if she would still be relevant next season. The financial losses that forced her to reinvent herself more than once. The uncertainty of an industry that worshipped youth and discarded women the moment their first wrinkle appeared. "I realized early on," she told me, "that beauty fades, but intelligence, that lasts." So she made a choice to never stop growing. Reinvention over and over again. Carmen had lived many lives. She had been the fresh-faced teenage model, gracing the cover of Vogue. She had been the woman who lost everything when financial misfortune wiped out her savings, twice. She had been the model who aged out of the industry, only to return decades later, proving that elegance has no expiration date. "Most people fear change," she mused, "but I embrace it. I have reinvented myself more times than I can count. And science agrees, adaptability is the key to longevity. Studies show that people who continuously learn and challenge themselves maintain cognitive function longer. Embracing change strengthens neural pathways, keeping the brain sharp and active. A growth mindset, believing that you can always evolve, leads to greater happiness and fulfillment." Carmen had embodied these truths long before science confirmed them. She never stopped reading. She never stopped asking questions. She never stopped moving forward. Curiosity as a lifeline. One of Carmen's greatest strengths was her insatiable curiosity. She wasn't afraid to admit when she didn't know something. She asked questions about science, about art, about history, about the way the world was changing. "Most people stop learning after school," she sighed, "and then they wonder why life feels smaller." She refused to let that happen. At an age when many settle into routine, Carmen was exploring, questioning, expanding. She took up new hobbies. She learned about technology. She engaged with people of all ages, ensuring she never became trapped in the past. "The moment you think you know everything," she said, "is the moment you start to grow old." The final transformation. As the evening light filled the room, I looked at this woman, this icon, this survivor, this eternal student of life, and I understood. She wasn't timeless because of her beauty. She was timeless because she never stopped evolving. "People think aging is about loss," she told me, "but it's not. It's about gaining wisdom, experience, perspective. If you do it right, you don't shrink with age. You expand." I sat there absorbing every word. Then she smiled, that playful twinkle in her eye. "But do you know the greatest lesson of all?" she asked. I shook my head, waiting. She leaned in. "It's about how you leave this world. With grace, with dignity, with peace." I held my breath. "Come back tomorrow, darling. That's a story worth telling." If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps me going and helps bring you more valuable health tips.